Good morning. Now we will talk about the second chapter of developmental psychology, the biological foundations. So under ng biological foundations, we will talk about heredity, prenatal development, and birth. So let's proceed to the next slide. Okay. So, natural selection and adaptive behavior, hindi na 'to, bago sa inyo, narinig niyo na 'to kay Charles Darwin, 'di ba, yung kanyang theory of, evolution, 'no? Um, According to that evolutionary, theory by Charles Darwin, mas nag-a-adapt, 'no, kailangan mag-adapt ng mga species in order for us to survive. So, sa human beings, kung i-a-apply natin yung theory na yun, medyo totoo siya, no? As we live in this world, ah, habang tayo ay lumalaki at dumadami, ang mga natitira o yung mga nagsusurvive sa Earth ay most likely sila yung the strongest, sila yung adaptive, no? And sila yung may kakayahan na mag-reproduce ng mga susunod na offspring. Kaya, yun yung most likely to survive kasi yun naman ang aim ng life, to reproduce, no? To procreate. Yan. So, natural selection and adaptive behavior. Hindi lang naman yung physical aspects yung kailangang adaptive, no? Of course, kailangan din yung psychological aspects natin, like yung ating character, yung ating values, kailangan adaptive siya sa panahon. No, tulad ngayon, halimbawa ngayon, nakakaranas tayo ng pandemic, so yung ating mga behaviors, yung ating mga thoughts, feelings ay dapat ay adaptive sa ating kasalukuyang environment. So, syempre, kung sino yung mas may kakayahang mag-adapt, sila yung magsusurvive at sila yung magpapatuloy at manganganak ng mga susunod na offspring. Yan. So, the next, ayan na nga, yung sinasabi ko, emphasizes the importance of adaptation, reproduction, and survival of the fittest in shaping behavior. Yan. In this view, natural selection favors behaviors that increase reproductive success. Kasi yun naman talaga yung pinaka-aim ng all living things, including us. And lalo na sa atin, reproductive success means the ability to pass your genes to the next generation. Kasi kaya nga kapag nanganganak na, 'di ba, sa mga animals, kadalasan namamatay na rin sila, 'di ba? Kumbaga naipasa mo na, so okay na, nagawa mo na yung purpose mo sa buhay. Sa humans, medyo ganun din, but of course, ah, hindi naman literal na gano'n na kapag nanganak na, mamamatay. O kumbaga, most likely na mas tatagal pa nga yung buhay mo kasi nga may kakayahan ka to reproduce. Ayan. Okay. So let me read the following case. Leslie and Glenn are excited at the thought of starting their own family. At the same time, they're nervous because Leslie's grandfather had sickle cell disease and died when he was just 20 years old. Leslie is terrified that her baby may inherit the disease that killed her grandfather. She and Glenn wish that someone could reassure them that their baby will be okay. So how can we assure Leslie and Glenn that the baby will be okay and the baby will not inherit Leslie's grandfather's sickle cell disease? So, dito papasok yung tinatawag nating heredity, yung role ng heredity sa ating development. Of course, syempre, going back to the issue of development, nature versus nurture. So, most likely, more probably na may chance na makuha nung baby ni Leslie yung sickle cell disease nung grandfather. Pero pwede rin namang hindi. So, it will depend on the genes, no? Na kung recessive ba, dominant, yan. So, we will talk about that later. Okay. So, sickle cell disease is inherited, and because Leslie's grandfather had a disorder, it runs in her family. So, ang tanong, will Leslie's baby inherit the disease? So first, before we delve into heredity, we discuss first the conception process. So sa women, we have this egg cell na tinatawag or the ovum, ova kapag madami. So ovum ay pinoproduce sa ating ovaries, no? So we have two ovaries, the left and the right. And then every month, nagre-release na at least one ovum ang ovary every month. So, alternate sila. So, ngayong month, the left, and then the next month, the right naman. So, ano yun? Regular yun. But sometimes, there are women na they have irregular menstruation. Meaning, there are months, even years, no, sa iba na hindi nag-release walang nire-release na ovum or egg cell from the ovary to the fallopian tube. So, yan. So, supposedly, there is an ovum released from the ovary to fallopian tube. If the ovum is not fertilized, then it will travel down to the uterus and it will parang ang tawag doon yung sasabog siya or I don't know, matutunaw siya or yun nga, it will become in a form of blood, no, and it will become menstruation. So, hindi siya kasi na fertilize. Okay, so, ito yung mga scientific terms to know the mitosis, meiosis, and fertilization. So, ang mitosis, it refers to the cellular reproduction in which the cell's nucleus duplicates itself with two new cells being formed. So, nagdo-duplicate, no? Each containing, pareho, no? Yung duplicate, parehong merong DNA, same DNA as the parent cell, arranged in the same 23 pairs of chromosomes. Yan. Sa meiosis naman, this is only for the eggs and the sperm, or known as the gametes. Now, a specialized form of cell division that occurs to form eggs and sperm, which is that contains separate chromosome. Kaya kapag yung gametes na yon, yung egg and sperm, or the sex cells na tinatawag, kaya kapag nag-meet sila, nag-fertilize sila, uh, uh, nagko-combine yung tig 23 na chromosomes nila. And then, kapag naging fertilized egg, called zygote, then yun na yung start ng mitosis. Okay? Yan. So, fertilization, this is the stage in reproduction when an egg and a sperm fuse to create a single cell called a zygote. Ayan na nga. So, a zygote is a single cell formed through fertilization. So, yun yung tawag dun sa organism na na-form. So, when the egg and the sperm unite or fuse together, ang tawag sa kanila na ay fertilized egg or zygote. Yan. So, meaning, it is now entering the germinal stage in the period of prenatal development. So, scientist ka na kayo. Okay, next, the mechanisms of heredity. So, ayan, ito yung mga scientific terms, again, no? If you have genetics class before, then you will understand ano to mga sasabihin ko. Ayan, so first, we have the chromosomes. Ito yung thread-like structure. So, ito yung parang malaking part, no? The chromosome. So, we have, yun nga, a male and a female sex cells, both have 23, and then when united, then it becomes 46. Autosomes, these are the first 22 pair of chromosome. So, from chromosome number 1 up to 22. Kasi yung ika-23 or 23rd pair of chromosome, these are the sex chromosome. That refers to the sex of the child. So, kung XX, di ba, that is female, and then kung XY, then that is male. So, the DNA is found inside the chromosome. So, kada chromosome ay mayroong DNA, which is the molecule composed of 4 nucleotide bases. That is the biochemical basis of heredity. So, nandyan yung 4 na nucleotide bases. Adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. So, para siyang helix, di ba? Helix form, and then, yan, alternate, ATCG, TACG, ganyan, and so on and so forth. So, this is how the chromosome looks like. So, sa letter A picture, we can see here the chromosome structure of a male. Yan, if you can notice, there are many genes, no, inside the first, yung mga first line ng chromosome, no, yung 1, 2, 3, yan, and then paunti ng paunti. At kung mapapansin nyo, pinakamaliit yung Y chromosome kasi nga, ito yung may pinaka-kaunting genes. Yan. And then in the letter B box, you can see now the chromosome structure of a female. Yan. So, we have 2 X's here in the end, no? Ito yung 23rd pair. Yan. Dito sa male, we have the X and Y. So, the male only produces Y sex chromosome. Ayan. Kaya mas malaki yung chance na maging girl yung anak kasi nga both the male and the female have X sex chromosome, no? But only the male has the Y. Kaya medyo rare species ang mga males, no? Ayan. So, this is how the chromosome or the cell looks like. Ayan. So, if this is the cell, then this is the nucleus, no, yun, the body. And then, inside the nucleus, there are chromosomes. Yan, nandiyan yung 23 pairs. And then, sa chromosome, naandun yung DNA. And then, sa DNA, naandun yung genes. Ayan. So, ganun ang kanyang structure. So, DNA is organized in a double helix with strands of phosphates and sugars linked by nucleotide bases. Yung sinabi ko a while ago, yung adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. Okay, next, genes. So these are group of nucleotide bases that provides a specific set of biochemical instructions. So ito kadalasan yung inaaral ng mga scientists natin, no? Kumbaga, iba nga sa kanila, may tinatawag na genetic, splicing, no? Kumbaga, inaaral nila yung kung ano yung, lalo na ngayon, yung ano tawag doon, yung kung paano pa mapapahaba yung buhay natin, no? Tinitingnan nila kung saan bang, ano bang genes or gene yung pampahaba ng buhay. Ayan. So, yan yung kadalasang inaaral nila. The functional units of heredity, because they determine the production of chemical substances that are ultimately the basis for all human characteristics and abilities. Ayan. So, eto na talaga yung parang may kinalaman sa heredity mo. Yan. The genes. Ayan. Okay, a person's 46 chromosome include roughly 25,000 genes. So, kung yun nga yung mapapansin nyo kanina dun sa figure, pinakamadaming genes talaga na makikita dun sa first line, no? Yung sa first 3 yata ng chromosomes. 3 pairs. Ayan. And then, paunti ng paunti. Ayan. So, chromosome 1 has the most number of genes and the Y has the fewest, just over 200. Okay, so ito na tayo, the genotype and the phenotype. The genotype means this is the hereditary makeup. So, yun yung parang the medical part. Phenotype is when the environment interferes with the genotype. Yeah. So, the physical, behavioral, and psychological features that result from the interaction between one's genes and the environment. Ayan, the alleles, variation of genes. Yan, pwedeng homozygous if the pair of chromosomes are the same, and heterozygous if it differs from each other. So, this is how it looks like. Ayan. So, sabi dito, ang isang X-linked recessive inheritance. Normally, or usually, the mother carries the X-linked recessive gene. Meaning, kaya mapapansin nyo kapag yung mga sex or chromosomal disorder or genetic disorder, kadalasan lalaki yung affected kasi babae yung carrier. Because we have the complete set of X chromosome, kaya nga X-linked. Kaya malamang babae o nanay ang carrier nung recessive gene na yon. Ayan, so if the mother carries the recessive gene, ayan yung magiging parang ang tawag dito, diagram. So, of course, if they have 4 children, no? So, ito, X ng tatay, yung dominant X ng nanay, so normal. Yan. And then we have the X ulit ng father. And then the recessive gene of the mother. So, this is a daughter or female. Pero carry niya yung recessive gene. So, most likely, siya ay carrier din. And then the Y chromosome of the tatay. And then the X chromosome, the nanay. So, normal, son. And then, the Y chromosome of the tatay and the R chromosome of the nanay, which is the yung may recessive or X-linked recessive, ito yung most likely na affected son. Ayan. So, sa 4, malamang merong magiging isang affected. Kung may babae, malamang siya ay carrier. At meron din naman, majority ay normal. So, ganyan yung nangyayari. So, this is the genetic makeup. But of course, yung kanilang physical, behavioral, and psychological features depende sa magiging interaction ng environment dun sa genes nila. Okay, yun yung phenotype. Okay? So, yan, heterozygous. Dominant form of an allele whose chemical instructions are followed. Recessive allele whose instruction are ignored in the presence of a dominant allele. So, kapag may dominant, nai-ignore si recessive. Yan. Kaya sa drawing, mas small letter ang recessive and dominant, of course, yun yung big letter. Ayan. So, these are the common phenotypes associated with single pair of genes. Ayan. Okay, so curly hair is a dominant phenotype, straight is a recessive phenotype. So, dito makikita nyo kung ano nga bang klaseng gene, no, yung nakuha nyo from your parents. So, if you have curly hair, malamang dominant phenotype. If you have straight, blonde, thin lips, no dimples, ayan, nearsighted, normal vision, and so on and so forth. Ayan. So, you can see here naman. Okay. Next, ayan, incomplete dominance. A situation in which one allele does not dominate another completely. So dito, um, dito nangyayari yung mga disorder if there is incomplete dominance or mutation dun sa mga genes, ayan. So, a sickle cell trait is a disorder in which individuals show signs of mild anemia only when they are seriously deprived of oxygen. It occurs in individuals who have one dominant allele for normal blood cells and one recessive sickle cell allele. Ayan. So, ito yung example. Oh, parang ito rin yung kanina, no? So, supposed to be itong big letter A is the dominant, the small is the recessive. Ayan, same with the mother. So, if they have 4 children, so yung tanong kanina, yung kay Leslie and Glenn, kung yung bang magiging baby nila ay magkakaroon din ng sickle cell disease. So, si mother, malamang siya yung carrier ng sickle cell, no? Sickle cell recessive gene. Ayan, so, kung ito ay dominant galing sa father, and then dominant then galing sa mother, then normal. Yan. Then dominant galing sa father, and then we have the recessive galing sa mother. So most likely magkakaroon ng sickle cell trait. But it doesn't mean na pwedeng mauwi sa disease, no? Kumbaga, may chance lang siya kasi nandun sa kanyang genes, but of course, it also needs the interaction of the environment para kumbaga parang trigger, no? Kailangan ma-trigger yung genes ng environment to make it possible na mag-manifest dun sa person. Ayan. And then, the other one, kung recessive naman galing sa father and then may dominant galing sa mother, ganun din. So, meron din siyang sickle cell trait. And then, if both recessive genes uh, are inherited from both mother and father, then eto na, siya na yung merong sickle cell disease. Ito yung when both mother and father have the trait, no? In each of these instances, individuals with the recessive phenotype have two recessive alleles, one from each parent. Okay? Individuals with the dominant phenotype have at least one dominant allele. Okay. Ayan, so ito pa yung ibang chromosomal abnormalities. So number 1 dyan is yung Down syndrome nga. Ayan, so ang treatment, yan, surgery, early intervention, infant stimulation, and special learning programs. So ito yung incidence rate. Yan. So, ito yung ang ang naka-specify dito is yung age ng mother. Halimbawa, ang age ng mother ay 20 years old. So, 1 in 1,900 births. Kung 35 years old naman, 1 in 300 births. And kung 45, 1 in 30 births. So, ganun siya ka-high yung chances, no? Pag paedad ng paedad yung nanay. So, yan. Kasi nga sabi nga, ang parang pinaka parang average or normal age to give to conceive a child is mga 20 to 35, mga ganon yan. So, yun yung parang ideal, no? Ideal yan. But of course, ngayon, nowadays, medyo tumataas or mas tumatanda yung mga women who conceive a child. Okay? Next is the Klinefelter syndrome or the XXY. So, merong extrang X sa chromosome. Of course, this is a man, a male person. May extra X nga lang siya. So, parang kung tutuusin, male siya pero yung kanyang features, physical features ay may pagkababae. Yan. So, nagkakaroon ng breast, yan. And medyo yung features niya, yung physical features niya, mukha siyang babae, but of course, lalaki pa rin siya. Lalaki talaga siya. Yan. So, hormone therapy can be effective para yung physical features niya ay maging talagang lalaking lalaki. And then we have the fragile X syndrome. Ito naman, isa lang yung X, tapos fragile pa. So, marupok, no? Marupok yung X. Ayan. So, more common in males than in females. Fragile X syndrome. So, ano nangyayari dito? Abnormality in the X can cause ID, no? Kung mapapansin nyo, halos lahat ay may effect sa kanila IQ, no? Intellectual abilities or intelligence quotient. Ayan. So, may learning disabilities or short attention span. So, what we can do is to enroll them in a special education class. Speech and language therapy will also be productive. Ayan. And we also have the Turner syndrome. This is for the female. A missing X can cause intellectual disability and sexual underdevelopment. So, ganun din. Ito naman para siyang yung medyo maliit siya. Tapos, ito yung tinatawag na webbed neck. Webbed neck, parang pinatong lang yung ulo nila sa kanilang lieg. Ganun yung itsura nila, kadalasan. Maliit, parang punggok, ganun, ng mga babae. Na, yun nga, kasi nga hindi develop yung kanilang sex chromosome. Isa lang yung X nila. So, underdevelop yung kanilang sexual characteristics. So, ganun din, ang treatment, pwedeng hormone therapy from childhood, no? As early as childhood and puberty para ma-develop yung kanilang pagkababae. Ayan. And then, we also have XYY syndrome. Ito naman ay for males, an extra Y chromosome can cause above average height. So, yon, medyo tumatangkad naman, sumobra naman. So, no special treatment required. Ayan. The treatments for these abnormalities do not necessarily erase the problem, but may improve the individual's adaptive behavior and quality of life. Kasi nga, chromosomal, gene link. Kaya, ibig sabihin, mahirap siyang basta tanggalin, basta gamutin. Kasi nga, nandun na yun. Kung naka-implant na, it's nature, no? But we can manage, we can improve the quality of life by imposing those treatment. Ayan. And of course, social support, no, compassion, ayan, para mas tumagal ang buhay nila at maging adaptive sila even though na meron silang mga ganoong klaseng abnormalities. Ayan. So, ito pa yung ibang gene link abnormalities, no? Gene link, hindi na siya chromosomal, ha? So, we have the cystic fibrosis, a glandular dysfunction that interferes with mucus production. Breathing and digestion are hampered, resulting in a shortened lifespan. So, ang treatment dito ay oxygen therapy, synthetic enzymes, and antibiotics. Most individuals live to middle age. Yan. And then we also have diabetes. This is also gene linked. So, kaya kung may diabetes sa pamilya, malamang ay may chance na magkaroon ka din ng diabetes, lalo na kung lifestyle mo ay hindi maganda, no? Kain ka ng kain, daming kanin, sweets, and many more. Ayan. The body does not produce enough insulin, which causes abnormal metabolism of sugar. So, kung alam mo nang may ganyan ka, so limit your sugar intake. Ayan, kasi, or else, it can be fatal unless treated with insulin. Ito na yung may tinuturok na. Ayan. And of course, maraming complications on diabetes. No, it can lead to kidney problems, no, and many more. Yan, hemophilia, a delayed blood clotting that causes internal and external bleeding. So ito naman, 'di ba, normally kapag nasugatan, yung dugo ay naaampat. Pero sa taong may hemophilia, hindi kaagad naaampat yung daloy ng dugo. Thus, causes internal and external bleeding. So, pag ganoon, ay di mauubusan ng dugo. So, ang treatment, ayan, blood transfusions, no, injections can reduce or prevent damage due to internal bleeding. So, bira din to and most likely males ang tinatamaan ng hemophilia. Okay, so to continue, some gene link abnormalities, we also have Huntington's disease. Central nervous system deteriorates, producing problems in muscle coordination and mental deterioration. So, ito naman, ang affected ay yung brain. So, it does not appear until age 35 or older. And kapag dumating na yung symptoms, death likely appears 10 or 20 years. So, ang incidence rate ay 1 in 20,000 births. The other one is the PKU or phenylketonuria. Dito, meron tayong naglalak na liver enzyme na nagme-metabolize ng phenylalanine. So, it can cause intellectual disability and also hyperactivity. So, meron siyang special diet na sinusunod kasi nga sa enzyme eh. So, more likely sa food. So, merong mga food na merong phenylalanine na hindi kaya i-convert ng liver, kaya hindi pwedeng kainin. Yan. So, 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 20,000 births. Okay. Number 3 is the sickle cell anemia. This is a blood disorder that limits the body's oxygen supply. So, ito yung kanina, yung sickle cell disease, no? It can cause joint swelling as well as heart and kidney failure. Yan. So, ang treatment, penicillin, medication for pain, antibiotics, blood transfusions, and hydroxyurea. So, again, hindi talaga siya maku-cure as in totally mawawala itong mga gene-linked abnormalities. Kasi nga nasa genes na siya, but we can only improve or manage the symptoms, especially the pain. Yeah. So, 1 in 400 African American children and lower among other groups. Another one is spina bifida. Ito yung yung hindi nag-close yung sa may, 'di ba, neural tube dun sa fetal stage, dun sa prenatal, yung neural tube hindi siya nagsara, no, hindi siya nag-close, which is dapat magko-close siya. So ang nangyari, nakabuka siya, so nakausli yung buto, so more likely na itong mga bata na ito, babies, ay hindi sila makakatayo ng ayos, so affected yung kanilang posture. Yan. So, neural tube disorder that causes brain and spine abnormalities. Yan. So, central nervous system din. It can be corrected during birth, okay, through surgery and other orthopedic devices and physical or medical therapy. So, incidence rate 2 in 1,000 births. Okay, and the last one, we have Tay-Sachs disease. This is the deceleration of mental and physical development caused by an accumulation of lipids in the nervous system. The treatment here is medication and of course special diet na naman, no? But death is likely by 5 years of age. So, doon naman kasi sa may lipids ang problem. So, 1 in 30 American Jews is a carrier. Yeah. Okay, so inherited disorders, yan. So inulit lang dito, ayan. Ito yung phenylketonuria or PKU, an inherited disorder in which the infant lacks a liver enzyme. So this enzyme, kino-convert niya yung phenylalanine, kaya phenylketonuria, di ba? Phenylalanine is an amino acid found in dairy products, so bawal yung mga bread, soda, and fish. Yan. Without this enzyme, phenylalanine accumulates and produces poison that harm the nervous system that will result in mental retardation or intellectual disability. Yeah. Ito yung Huntington's disease. Sa brain din siya. So, it is a progressive and fatal type of dementia caused by dominant allele. So, it can be found on the chromosome number 4. So, dahil siya ay chromosomal, so there will come a time na merong certain age, most likely mga 35, 40, ganyan. So, pag may edad-edad na, dun siya magmamanifest. So, it's another dementia, no? Parang Alzheimer, Parkinson, pero ito ay Huntington's. Ibig sabihin chromosomal siya kasi yung Parkinson naman tsaka yung Alzheimer ay hindi naman siya chromosomal. Yan. So, these are the common disorders associated with the sex chromosome. So, some of these I already mentioned dun sa previous slide. So, we have Klinefelter, the XXY. Again, this is a male. Tapos may extra X, no? Kaya nagmukha siyang babae. So, ito yung mga characteristics niya. Tall, small testicles, sterile. So, sterile, ibig sabihin, dahil nga underdeveloped yung kanyang small yung kanyang testicle, so more likely yung kanyang sperm cell ay hindi ganon kadami para makapag-reproduce. Ayan, below normal intelligence and of course passive. So 1 in 500 male births. We also have XYY complement. Yan. So, male din ito. So, XY, ibig sabihin may sobra naman ditong Y. Doon sa kanina, sa Klinefelter, sobra yung X. Dito ay sobra ang Y. So, these are tall. Some cases apparently have below normal intelligence. Ayan. Turner syndrome, isa lang yung X. Okay, so these are female. Females, they are short, limited development of secondary sex characteristics. Problems perceiving spatial relations. And we also have the triple X syndrome. Female din ito. So, may extra X. Kanina kulang. Ito extra. Normal stature but delayed motor and language development. So, if you can notice, pag sumobra, pag kumulang, doon tayo nagkakaroon ng problema. So, dapat ay sakto lang, pares lang sila. Either XX or XY para maging normal yung development, especially pagdating sa kanyang identification of sex. Ayan. Okay, so ito yung picture ng isang male na mayroong Klinefelter syndrome, 'di ba? Sabi ko kanina mukha siyang girl. Ayan. Meron siyang breast development, narrow yung shoulders, small yung kanyang testicles, no? Tapos wide yung hips niya, long-legged. So para siyang babae pero lalaki talaga siya and affected ang kanyang IQ. And this is the one with Turner syndrome. Ayan, Turner syndrome. Yan. So heredity, environment, and development. Okay, so behavioral genetics is the branch of genetics that studies the inheritance of behavioral and psychological traits. So it follows our developmental issue of nature and nurture, wherein the nature is the, yun na nga, yung genes, heredity, yan, and the nurture is about the environment that we are in, di ba? So meron siyang interaction to one another. Yan. So, behavioral genetics. Yan. Polygenic inheritance when phenotypes are the result of the combined activity of many separate genes. So, kaya there is no two individuals, two person that share the same physical and psychological traits. Even twins, magkaiba pa rin sila because of polygenic inheritance na of course, we have the genotype, phenotype. Pagdating sa phenotype, iba-iba pa rin yung ating environment. So, iba-iba pa rin yung manifestation ng ating genotype. No, depending on your environment. So, even if you are siblings or if you are twins, magkaiba pa rin because there is what we call non-shared environment. Pag sinabing non-shared, hindi kayo same ng environment. Halimbawa, oo nga, you have the same family household, you share the same family, umuwi kayo sa isang bahay, but paglabas nyo ng bahay, magkaiba kayo ng set of friends, set of peers. So, yun yung non-shared environment. So, it can influence your growth and development. Okay, ito yung, so we have two kinds of twins. So we have the monozygotic twins. So because they came from one zygote, only one egg and one sperm, and then nag-split to two. Yeah, the result of a single fertilized egg splitting to form two new individuals, also called identical twins. So most likely, parehong babae or parehong lalaki because they share 100% the same chromosomal aspects. Ayan. So, monozygotic. So, ganyan ang itsura niya. This is the amniotic sac. And doon sa ilalim, yan, nakita nyo na yan. Yan ay placenta. So, they share the same placenta wherein the nutrients and waste, no, they ay nandyan sa placenta, but they have separate umbilical cord. Yan. So, merong dalawang umbilical cord. Of course, separate yan, no? Hindi pwede mag-share. Ayan. So, nasa loob sila ng iisang amniotic sac o yung sa Tagalog ay panubigan. Ayan. Isa yan. And then, the other one is the dizygotic twins. So, ito naman galing sa dalawang fertilized egg or dalawang zygote. So, we have two egg and two sperm. Of course, kapag may isa pang egg, may chance na ma-penetrate pa rin ng isa pang sperm yung egg na yon. Yan, the result of two separate eggs fertilized by two sperm, also called fraternal twins. Sa fraternal twins, pwedeng magkaiba ng sex. No, pwedeng magkaiba ng sex because there are separate sperm cell, no? Kasi nga ang nagbibigay kadalasan ng sex ay yung sperm, no? If yun nga yung Y, siya lang yung may Y chromosome. So pwede yung isa ay babae, isa ay lalaki. And dahil magkaiba ang egg at sperm or yun na nga magkaibang zygote, dalawang zygote, probably malaki yung chance na hindi sila magkamuka. Hindi sila identical, kaya nga fraternal twins. Okay, so clear yan ha. Yan, so path from genes to behavior. Heredity and environment interact dynamically throughout development. Ayan, so the measure that is derived from a correlation is the heritability coefficient. Yan, gaano mai-inherit, no? To what extent mai-inherit yung isang genes ng isang tao. Yan, genes can influence the kind of environment to which a person is exposed. Yan. Niche picking, a process of deliberately seeking environments that are compatible with one's genetic makeup. Environmental influences typically make children within a family different. Yan, ito yung kaninang binanggit ko, yung non-shared environmental influence. Dito sa genes can influence the kind of environment. Mamaya, meron kasing isang slide mamaya na tumutukoy doon sa gene-environment interaction. So, itong niche picking na sinasabi dito, ito yung parang yung genes natin, dinadirect niya tayo to find our niche. No? Pag sinabi mong niche, ito yung parang para siyang habitat mo na kung saan ay mafu-fulfill mo yung iyong fullest potential. Na kung saan dun ka magaling. Pwedeng skill yon, pwedeng talent, no? Pwedeng intellect. Yan. For example, meron kang nasa genes mo na um, marunong kang or inclined ka sa music or sa pag-play ng musical instrument. So, etong genes mo, idadirect ka, no, without you knowing, unconsciously, na idadirect ka dun sa environment, hahanapin mo yon yung environment na kung saan, halimbawa, kaya ka pala mahilig pumunta sa mga lugar na maraming musical instrument o kaya mahilig ka manood ng concert or mahilig ka tumipa ng gitara or ng teklado ng piano is because nasa sa genes mo na yon. And then, ida-direct ka niya, ihahanap, i-influence niya yung environment na meron ka. Yan. So, ganun siya nag-i-interact yung genes dun sa ating environment. Yan. So, ibig sabihin, dati pa man, hindi pa to na nalalaman ni Sigmund Freud itong science, no? Kasi nga, more on unconsciously, yun yung explanation on why we do such things without our consciousness or awareness. Kumbaga, hindi mo naman alam na ba't ka nga ba mahilig doon, ba't ba yun na napuntahan mong talent o skill. Kasi nga, doon ka na dinirect nung genetic makeup na meron ka. Yan. Na hindi mo alam, of course, no? Yan. Unless nagpa-genetic counseling ka, na nalaman mo na meron ka palang ganun, yun. So, malalaman mo. Environmental influences typically make children within a family different. So, kahit na marami kayong magkakapatid, isang pamilya lang kayo or kambal pa kayo, magkaiba pa rin talaga. Dahil doon sa mga tinatawag nating non-shared environmental influences. Kasi nga, yun yung non-shared nga eh. So, from the word itself, magkaiba kayo ng set of friends, magkaiba kayo ng hobbies, interest. So, most likely, paglabas nyo ng bahay, magkaiba kayo ng environment na pupuntahan. So, iba yung influence ng isa sa isa. Yan. Kaya non-shared environmental influences. So, yan. Ito yung diagram that explains, no? So, yung genes mo, no? Sabi ko kanina, may impact siya sa environment mo, no? Dinadirect ka niya doon sa kung anong environment, yung kung saan ay mahuhone mo pa o ma-improve mo pa or madidiscover mo yung mga skills and talents mo. Of course, yung parents' genes, yan, meron niyang kinalaman din, no? May impact din yan. Yan. Okay. Ayan. So, parents influence their children by providing the genes and experiences, diba? Kumbaga halimbawa, oo nga, nasa genes mo nga na pwede kang maging magaling sa larangan ng musika, pero hindi ka naman in-expose ng parents mo sa larangan ng musika. Walang chance or walang opportunity to play instrument or to sing, no, or to exercise or practice your vocal cords. So hindi rin lalabas yung or magma-manifest yung galing mo pagdating sa music. Yan. So, kailangan tandem sila. Nature and nurture. So, they work together to shape development. Okay, heredity environment correlations. So, dito we have 3 heredity environment correlation: the passive, evocative, active niche picking. So sa passive, children inherit genetic tendencies from their parents, and parents also provide an environment that matches their own genetic tendencies. So ibig sabihin, ito yung example ko a while ago na if you have a musically inclined parents, usually ganun din yung kanilang mga anak, musically inclined din. And they are likely to provide an environment rich in music for their children. Kasi oo nga, meron kang genetic tendencies to be musically inclined, but your parents doesn't provide you an environment to practice your musical skill or skill in music, then most likely na hindi magde-develop yung genetic tendency mo to be good in music. So that is passive. Kasi kailangan i-provide yung environment for the genes para mag-manifest uh, yung kanyang behavior. Ayan. Pangalawa, yun namang evocative, the child's genetic tendencies elicit stimulation from the environment that supports a particular trait. Thus, genes evoke environmental support. So dito, yung mismong genes mo, yung meron kang trait, for example, ito yung a happy, outgoing child elicits smiles and friendly responses from others. So you're not aware na yung trait na meron ka ay ini-evoke niya, yung para bang tinitrigger niya yung environment para i-support yung trait mo na yun. So, ikaw ay masayahin. So, sa environment na kung saan ikaw ay naroon, mapapatawa mo, di ba? Mapapa-smile mo din yung nasa paligid mo. So, yun ay evocative. Kumbaga, yung genes na meron ka, yung trait na meron ka, iti-trigger niya yung environment na kung saan ka naroon para mag-respond sa'yo positively. Yan. Or negatively, pwede rin naman. Kasi kung halimbawa, ang trait mo ay you have an aggressive trait. So, kung lagi kang galit, so most likely, yung environment na kung saan ka naroon, ay ang ire-respond sa'yo ay galit din, or inis, or disappointment, or whatever na may connection sa aggressiveness. So, ganun siya. Evocative. Yan. Pangatlo, active niche picking. Children actively seek out niches in their environment that reflect their own interests and talents and are thus in accord with their genotype. So kanina passive, walang kang ginawa, no? Yung parents mo, ang nag-provide ng environment para mag-work yung genetic tendencies mo para mag-manifest siya sa behavior mo, no? Sa evocative, wala ka rin namang halos ginawa dito kasi yung yung genetic tendency mo, yung genetic trait, yung trait mo na yon, in-stimulate niya lang yung environment. Kumbaga, syempre, ang genes mo, yun yung stimulus, and then the response will come from the environment. So, wala ka rin ginawa doon, no? Involuntary din yun. Pero evocative, no? Sa active niche picking, dito, ikaw yung mismong gagawa. the children actively seek out niches. So, hahanapin mo mismo yung environment na kung saan ikaw ay merong interes, kung saan ikaw ay may talento, yan, na may kinalaman yon sa iyong genotype. Halimbawa, libraries, sport fields. So, pupunta ka dyan. Pupunta ka dyan sa mga libraries, sa sport fields, sa store na may mga musical instrument. So, hahanapin mo dyan yung kung ano mismo yung, kung anong mga talento, skill, competencies na meron ka na in accordance with your genotype. Yan. Active niche picking. Yan. Kaya pala mahilig akong pumunta sa library, magbasa, no? Yan. Kasi nandoon yung, may genes ako na magiging magaling akong teacher or magaling akong investigator or researcher. Yan. Or kung mahilig ka namang, yun nga, pumunta sa mga sports arena. Yan. So, most likely na may genes ka towards sports and also music or arts or whatever, no? Yan. Okay, the epigenetic view emphasizes that development is the result of an ongoing bidirectional interchange between heredity and environment. Yan ang ibig sabihin ng epigenetic view. No, hindi ibig parang example nito is yung sabihin dire-diretso siya. No, ang growth development ay dire-diretso, hindi siya bumabalik sa umpisa, ay meron siya mga stages na dinadaanan, but it doesn't mean na nandun ka na sa stage na yon ay mawawala na yung natutunan mo from the previous stage. So, dala-dala mo yun. No? Dala-dala mo siya. For example, yung skills for, ito nasabi ko na to before, yung skills mo for walking, di ba? For example, nakakalakad ka ngayon, 2 years old, hindi ibig sabihin na nakakalakad ka na, hindi ka na nakakadapa or nakakagulong or nakakaupo. So, dala-dala mo pa rin siya. No, na para doon sa susunod na stages. Ayan. Gene X environment interaction. So, the interaction of a specific measured variation in the DNA and a specific measured aspect of the environment. So, ito yung kaninang example din doon sa passive, no? Yung bang may interaction between the genes and the environment na hinahanap mismo ng genes mo yung environment na kung saan ay makakatulong para siya ay mag-develop o mag-manifest o mangyari. Yan. Okay. So now, let's go to the prenatal development from conception to birth. So a typical prenatal development begins with fertilization and ends with birth. It takes between 266 and 280 days, so most likely 38 to 40 weeks. Yeah. So let's read the following case. Yoonjung has just learned that she's pregnant with her first child. Like many other parents-to-be, she and her husband Kinam are ecstatic. But they also soon realize how little they know about what happens during pregnancy. Yoonjung is eager to visit her obstetrician to learn more about the normal timetable of events during pregnancy. So yan, tingnan natin, ano nga ba? What happens during pregnancy? No? Anong nangyayari dun sa prenatal development? Yan. Prenatal development is the many changes that turn a fertilized egg into a newborn human. Okay, so prenatal development is divided into 3 periods: the germinal, the embryonic, and the fetal period. So this is the period of the zygote. that happens in the first 2 weeks after conception. So once na nag-meet na or nag-unite yung egg and then sperm, it will be called the fertilized egg or zygote. So it includes the creation of the zygote, continued cell division, yung mitosis, and the attachment of the zygote to the uterine wall. Kasi once na naging fertilized egg na siya, it will travel down from the fallopian tube to the uterus. So once na nag-implant na yung zygote doon sa uterus, that's the start of the embryonic period. So yun na yung end. So for 2 weeks, meaning 14 days, dun pa lang nagta-travel yung zygote o yung fertilized egg galing sa fallopian tube down to the uterine wall. So yan. And then the germ disc, these are called the small cluster of cells dun sa center ng zygote that eventually magiging baby. And the placenta, ito yung sa Tagalog inunan, in which nutrients and wastes are exchanged between the mother and the developing child. The blastocysts, these are the inner layer of cells that develop during the germinal period. So this will be later developed into the embryo. And then the trophoblast, ito yung outer layer of cells. Yung blastocyst, yung inner layer na magiging embryo, and the trophoblast is the outer layer na magsusupport ng nutrition sa embryo. So meaning, ito yung magiging amniotic sac. Ayan, meron na tayong placenta. And then sa mismong embryo, dun magde-develop naman yung umbilical cord. Okay, so zygote is the fertilized egg. In vitro fertilization, ito yung isang way on how to conceive a child in which the sperm and egg are mixed in a petri dish to create a zygote and then placed in the woman's uterus. It can be in yung woman talaga, or it can be in another woman's body such as a surrogate. Okay? And then eugenics is an effort to improve the human species by letting only people whose characteristics are valued by a society mate and pass along their genes. And ito yung sinasabi ko a while ago about implantation. This is the start of the embryonic period. Once na nag-implant na, nag-burrow na into the uterine wall yung zygote, and mako-connect na yung blood vessels ng nanay dun sa zygote, then that is the start of the embryonic period, the implantation. So, ibig sabihin yan, yung hudyat, natapos na yung germinal period or period of the zygote. Okay, so ito yon. Ito yung picture or model diagram. Ayan. So, makikita natin dito, no, the first, yung single egg from the ovary is drawn into fallopian tube. So, sabi ko nga, every month, nag-release yung either the left or the right ovary ng isang egg doon sa fallopian tube. So, for 9 to 16 days. Yan, of 28-day menstrual cycle. And then the fertilization usually occurs in upper third of tube within 24 hours after ovulation. So, ito siya. So, ibig sabihin, once na nag-ovulate na yung babae, then ready na siya to conceive. No? And then 24 to 30 hours after fertilization, the male sperm and female egg chromosome material unite. So, ito na, nag-start na yung zygote, no, yung germinal period. Nag-start na yung period of the zygote. Yan. And then, pang-apat, the first egg cell division. Ayan na. Nagkaroon na ng mitosis. So, nag-divide na. And then, for 36 hours, 2 cells na siya. 48 hours, 4 cells. 3 days, small compact ball of 16 to 32 cells na siya. And then 4 days, a hollow ball of 64 to 128 cells. So that is already called a blastocyst. That will later on become the embryo. And 4 to 5 days, the inner cell mass formed. Yun na nga yun, yung blastocyst still free in uterus. And number 10, within 6 to 7 days, the blastocyst attaching to wall of the uterus. So, ito yung outer wall of the uterus, and this is the inner wall of the uterus. Yeah. And next, the period of the embryo, weeks 3 to 8. Ayan, the embryo is a term given to the zygote once it is completely embedded in the uterine wall. So yan, paulit-ulit kong sinasabi na once na na-implant na burrow na, no, sabihin, nagdig na doon sa uterine wall yung zygote, that is the start of the period of the embryo or embryonic period. Embryo, okay lang, pareho lang tama yun. So, ito yung mga derm, no, na nabuo. Ayan, so we have the ectoderm, the outer layer of the embryo, the mesoderm, the middle layer, and the endoderm, the inner layer. So, yung inner, yun yung magiging lungs and digestive system. And then the mesoderm, that will become the muscles, bones, and circulatory system. And the ectoderm is the outer layer, which will become the hair and the nervous system. Ayan. The amnion, this is the inner sac in which the developing child rests. So, ito yung sa Tagalog ay panubigan. Yan. And then, the amniotic fluid, yun yung tubig doon sa loob ng amnion. And then, the umbilical cord is the structure containing the veins and arteries that connects the developing child to the placenta. So, yung amnion or amniotic sac, the umbilical cord, and the placenta, those three are called the life support system of the embryo. Kapag wala yung tatlo na yun, mahihirapan or hindi makaka-develop into a fetus yung embryo. Yan. So, ito yung tsura niya, the placenta and the umbilical cord. So, ito yung amniotic sac, yan, manipis niyan. And then, itong nakikita nyo na mahabang cord, this is the umbilical cord. Ayan. And this is the placenta. Ayan. So, ito yung mga parang mas naka-zoom in, no? Kung ano yung nangyayari doon sa, yan, sa umbilical cord. Yan, yung veins. Bali, nakakonect yung placenta doon sa mother and then sa fetus, no? Yan. Then, yan. So, meron tayong dalawang klase ng development principle pagdating sa embryo. Kahit hindi sa embryo, kahit sa fully developed human. So, these are called the cephalocaudal and the proximodistal. So, when we say cephalocaudal, from head to toe. Yan. So, head develop first before the rest of the body. A principle of physical growth that states that structures nearest the head develop first. So, pababa. No? Pababa yung ating growth. Yan. Cephalocaudal. Cepha meaning the head and then caudal, tail. Yan. Proximodistal principle of physical growth that states that structures nearest the center of the body develop first. So, oo nga, head first before the rest of the body as well as kung ano yung center muna bago yung outward. Yan. So, proximodistal. Kumbaga, yung mga inner muna bago yung labas. Parang ganon. Kumbaga, palad muna bago yung daliri. Yan. Proximodistal. Kahit naman sa ibang living things, living organism, ito rin yung pina-follow na principle. Diba? Cephalocaudal and proximodistal. Yan. Arms and legs develop before hands and feet. And the organogenesis, this is the term used for the organ formation kasi yung organ formation usually takes place in the embryonic period. Yan. So, nagkakaroon na ng mga organs, di ba? That develops to the parts of the body. Okay. Ayan, the period of the fetus, weeks 9 to 38. So, ito yung pinakamahabang period o prenatal period. Yan, the fetal, no? So, ang tawag na dun sa organism sa ganitong stage or period ay fetus. So, kanina, embryo, no? Kanina, isa pa, germinal, zygote, ngayon, fetus na siya. So, from 9 weeks to 38 weeks. Yan. So, meron na siyang cerebral cortex, unti-unti nang nabubuo. Ito yung wrinkle surface of the brain that regulates many functions, no? Yan. The vernix, ito yung parang liquid, sticky liquid, no? Substance na nagpo-protect sa skin ng fetus during development. Kaya pag nilabas siya, di ba, basa siya. Yan. So, that is the vernix. O parang madulas. Kasi it will protect also not only the baby but also the mother. Age of viability, ito yung ibig sabihin nito, yung bang pwede na siyang lumabas sa ganong edad o sa ganoong time, no? Ibig sabihin pwede na siya, makakasurvive na siya. Kaya age of viability. Yan. Typically, 7 months after conception, viable na, no? Pwede na siyang makasurvive. Pero syempre, mas maganda kung fully developed, mabuo natin yung 38 weeks. Some fetuses hanggang 40, no, 40 weeks pwede. Yeah, so this is how it looks like. The fetus is wrapped in the amniotic sac, yan, and connect the mother through the umbilical cord. Yan. So, ito yung sa pregnancy period. So, sabi ko kanina, ang pregnancy ay nahahati rin sa tatlo. So, we have the first trimester or the first 3 months, and then the second trimester, and then the third trimester. Ayan. So, dito sa first 3 months, ayan, ito yung, minsan ito yung pinakadelikado rin. So, the conception to 4 weeks, and then 8 weeks, and then 12 weeks. Ayan. So, ito yung mga development na nangyayari. So, less than 1/10 inch long, beginning development of the spinal cord, the nervous system, the gastrointestinal system, the heart, and lungs. And then, the amniotic sac envelopes the preliminary tissues of the entire body and is called a zygote. So, germinal period ito. Hanggang dito sa 8 weeks, no? Sakop niya yung germinal. Pero dito, papunta na sa embryonic period, no, ng prenatal development. Ayan, so meron ng arms and legs, brain is forming, fetal heartbeat is detectable with ultrasound, and is called an embryo. Ayan, and then the 12 weeks, ayan na, it's called the fetus na. Okay, it's about 2 inches long and weighs about 0.5 ounce. Can move arms, legs, fingers, and toes. No? Gumagalaw na siya. Fingerprints are present. Can smile, frown, suck, and swallow. And pwede na ma-distinguish yung kanyang sex. Yan. And can also urinate. Yan. Okay, next trimester. Ito na yung sa middle. 16 weeks, 20 weeks, and 24 weeks. So, in 16 weeks, 5 inches long na yung fetus. Yan, ang timbang na niya ay 3.5 ounces. Heartbeat is strong. Skin is thin and transparent. Yan. Meron na siyang hair na tinatawag nating lanugo kasi ano pa siya, manipis, sobrang nipis pa niya. And it covers the body, so mula ulo hanggang paa. No? Fingernails and toenails are forming and has coordinated movements, able to roll over in the amniotic fluid. Yan. 20 weeks is about, ayan na, 6.5 inches long, 11 ounces. Heartbeat is audible, naririnig na with ordinary stethoscope. Hindi na kailangan pa ng ultrasound, no? Naririnig na using stethoscope ng doctor. It sucks thumb, hiccups. Ano yung hiccups? Yung ba yung sinok, ganon. Yan. Hair, eyelashes, eyebrows are present. In 24 weeks, 12 inches long na siya. So, isang ruler na yung kanyang haba. 1.3 pounds. Skin is wrinkled and covered with protective coating called vernix. Eyes are open. Waste matter is collected in bowel and has strong grip. Yeah. And then for the third trimester, the last 3 months, yan. So, 15 inches long ng baby or ng fetus. 2.3 pounds, adding body fat, is very active. And meron ng rudimentary breathing. Sabi ng rudimentary, parang pabugso-bugso, no? Hindi pa ganun ka-stable, pero nahinga na siya. Movements are present. In 32 weeks, 17 inches long na siya, 4 pounds, has periods of sleep and wakefulness. Yan, so natutulog na siya, nagigising, so meron na siyang circadian rhythm, no? Kung naalala niyo pa sa inyong intro to psych. Response to sounds. Kaya during this time, pwede nang basahan ng kwento, kausapin yung fetus habang nasa loob ito ng tiyan. Kasi nagre-respond na siya sa sound. So, pag narinig niya yung boses ng nanay niya, familiar ito sa kanya. So, nag-move siya doon sa loob. Every time na meron siyang familiar sound na naririnig. Because the most sensitive sense that we have is the sense of hearing. Yan. May assume the birth position. So, ikot na siya, yung ulo niya ay unti-unti na umiilalim na. So, birth position yon. Yung ulo ay malapit na sa may puwerta. Bones of head are soft and flexible. Yan. Kaya kapag lumabas siya doon sa puwerta ng babae, parang flexible kasi siya, malambot pa siya, so kakasya siya sa doon ng 10 centimeters. No, parang ganito. Yan. And then, dahil flexible siya, mas madali siyang makakalabas. And also, this is soft. No? Yung the head is soft. Yan. Iron is being stored in the liver. Yan. 36 to 38 weeks. 19 to 20 inches long. So, yan yung normal na usually length. No? And then, it weighs 6 to 7.5 pounds. Yan. Normally yan. Ha? Pwedeng may mga baby na malaki. 9 pounds, 10 pounds. Yan. Pero ito yung normal. So, kapag bumaba tayo dyan, let's say 5, 4, or 3 pounds, so underweight yung fetus. Skin is less wrinkled. Yan, kasi nga nag-expand na siya. Yan, so vernix is thickened na, naglapot na siya, no, kumapal. Lanugo is mostly gone. So, mas lamang na yung skin lang, no, hindi na siya yung nababalot sa hair. Less active, and gaining immunities from the mother. Yeah, so ready na siya to survive in the outside world. Yan. So the brain development usually occurs in the embryonic period, no? Doon pa lang nabubuo na, nagde-develop na yung brain. So these are the 4 important phases of the brain's development during the prenatal period. The neural tube, no, ito yung pinaka-head pa lang, and then the spine, no, na later on siya yung magiging spinal cord. So, neural tube ang tawag doon. The neurogenesis, ito yung phase na kung saan nagkakaroon na ng multiplication of neurons. Yan, neuronal migration, no, kumbaga, pinaka-center kasi yung head, yung brain, no? So, doon maraming neurons. And then, eventually, dahil nga ginagamit na natin yung body natin, napupunta na yung mga neurons na yun sa ibang parts pa ng katawan. And neural connectivity. Yan. So, yung mga neurons ay, syempre, may mga connection siya. Yan. To process learning and experience, through experience, neural connectivity. Kaya kapag hindi mo na ginagamit yung certain experience na yun o learning, nadi-disconnect yung mga neurons na yun, and then eventually, it will be pruned out. No, tinatawag yung synaptic pruning. Yan. Or parang, kumbaga sa damo, pag hindi mo na siya kailangan, tinatabas siya. Yan. So, synaptic pruning ang tawag doon. Okay, so ito yung neural tube. About 18 to 24 days after conception, develops out of the ectoderm. Yan. The tube closes at the top and bottom ends at about 27 days after conception. Kaya kapag hindi siya nag-close, it will develop to spina bifida. Yan. And anencephaly. So, itong mga tao or individuals na may spina bifida, paglabas nila, since hindi develop yung kanilang spinal cord, apektado yung kanilang posture. So, that's why as early as infant or as early as infancy period, kailangan na nila ng mga devices such as crutches, braces, or wheelchairs. Yan. Pero pwede naman siyang i-surgery. Pwede siyang i-correct through surgery yung spina bifida. Yan. A strategy that can help to prevent neural tube defects is for pregnant women to take adequate amounts of the B vitamin folic acid. Kaya usually kapag buntis, niresetahan ng iron with folic acid kasi yun ay nakakatulong sa nervous system ng bata. Neurogenesis. This is the generation of new neurons. Yan, a process that continues through the remainder of the prenatal period, but is largely complete by the end of the 5th month after conception. So, the peak of neurogenesis is as many as 200,000 neurons every minute. So, sobrang dami yan. Na kung ma-recall ninyo sa intro to psych, para siyang fireworks display, no? Kapag nag-connect yung ating mga neurons sa dami. Neuronal migration happens during the 6 to 24 weeks after conception. Yan. This involves cells moving outward from their point of origin to their appropriate location and creating the different levels, structures, and regions of the brain. So, maraming region, no? So, we have the four lobes, the frontal, occipital, temporal, diba? Parietal. So, yung mga neurons na nandun lang sa isang center, sa isang part, nagmamigrate dun sa ibang mga parts ng ating brain. Yan. At napakadami pang iba pang parts. Yan. Once a cell has migrated to its target destination, it must mature and develop a more complex structure. That's why it explains how complex human beings are because of our brain. Kasi more specialized yung ating brain structure, ang ating neuronal structure compared to other living organism. Yan. Kaya dun pa lang, structure-wise, complex na, how much more yung ating internal structure, no? Yung ating personality, yung ating character. So, mas complex siya. Number 4, neural connectivity. So, at about the 23rd prenatal week, yan, connections between neurons begin to occur, a process that continues postnatally. So, ito, hindi ito na tumitikil, no? Ito ay patuloy hanggang sa pagtanda, hanggang tayo ay adult na nagko-connect pa din. So, sabi ko nga, if there are experiences or learning that are usually forgotten, nawawala yung connection niya. And then, ito ay kusa or kusang napuprune, no? Doon sa loob mismo ng ating katawan. Okay, so now let's go to the general risk factors on prenatal development. Yan, so we have 3 general risk factors. 1 is nutrition, ng mother of course, stress, yan, and the mother's age. So itong tatlo na to ay may impluensya, no, dun sa prenatal development at dun din sa pregnancy itself. Siyempre, nutrition, kailangan kumain ng sapat ng isang babaeng buntis. Yan, kailangan niyang uminom ng bitamina tulad ng folic acid para sa nervous system ng kanyang anak. Kasi kung hindi appropriate ang kanyang nutrition, the infant will likely to be born prematurely and underweight. Yan. At hindi rin maapektuhan din yung nervous system ng fetus. Yun pa naman ang pinaka-importante. Ayan, ito yung kaninang sinasabi ko, no, yung spina bifida. So, ganyan siya yung itsura niya. Kapag hindi nag-close yung neural tube, more likely this will happen. Ayan, so, malalagyan kasi siya ng spinal fluid. This is a disorder in which the embryo's neural tube does not close properly. Ayan. Factors in pregnancy is stress. The mother's stress. This refers to the physical and psychological responses to threatening or challenging conditions. Women who report greater anxiety during pregnancy more often give birth early or have babies who weigh less than average. Children are less able to pay attention as infants and more prone to behavioral problems as preschoolers. The harmful effects of stress are not linked to anxiety in general, but are specific to worries about pregnancy, particularly worries in the first few months. So, yung stress ay isa rin sa mga risk factors o mga pwedeng makakontribute, no, sa pinagdadaanan ng isang buntis. Ayan, so, yun daw mga babae na mas anxious kapag buntis ay pwedeng manganak, no, ng mas maaga o kaya naman ay underweight yung kanilang mga baby. Yan. So, kaya importante na ang isang babaeng buntis ay less yung kanyang stress. Although hindi natin maiwasan yung stress, pero yung ability to handle it, dun tayo mag-focus. Yan. Okay? So, ano nga bang nagagawa ng stress specifically? So, una, it reduces the flow of oxygen to the fetus while increasing its heart rate and activity level. So, di ba kapag stress tayo, hindi tayo makahinga, o kaya naman hinahabol natin yung paghinga natin. So, yung flow ng oxygen nung nanay, affected din yung fetus sa loob. Yan. Thus, naapektuhan din yung heart rate and activity level ng fetus. Pangalawa, it weakened the immune system, making her more susceptible to illness. So kapag stress ang babae, ang buntis, ay may effect ito sa kanyang immune system kasi hindi siya makakain ng maayos o kaya naman hindi siya makakatulog ng maayos. So affected yung kanyang immune system kapag hindi nakakakain ng tama at sapat. And yung sleep din, no? So, affected na humihina yung immune system. Thus, pag mahina ang immune system, mas prone siya sa illnesses o sa mga sakit. Pangatlo, more likely to smoke or drink alcohol and less likely to rest, exercise, and eat properly. So, kapag stress, yung iba, they result to negative coping mechanisms such as smoking or drinking alcoholic beverages. So, instead na babawasan yun, dapat i-minimize or alisin yun, i-avoid, mas lalong napapahamak kasi nga kapag may mga babae na or may mga buntis na yun yung kanilang coping mechanism. Kapag nakainom or alcoholic or nag-smoke, may effect yun sa fetus paglabas. Kung may tinatawag tayong fetal alcoholic syndrome or FAS or FASD, fetal alcoholic syndrome disorder. Ayan. So, increased stress can harm prenatal development in several ways. Ayun na nga yung tatlo. Okay, mother's age is also a risk factor. So, a while ago, I mentioned na yung mga individuals na merong Down syndrome, ang isang factor kung bakit nagkakaroon ng Down syndrome is yung age ng mother. So, yan. So, kapag sobrang bata o sobrang may edad na, ay mas more likely na may chance na magkaroon ng anak na may chromosomal disorder. Yan. So, in general, prenatal development is most likely to proceed normally when women are between 20 and 35 years of age. So, yun yung parang ideal age ng pagko-conceive or pagbubuntis. Are healthy and eat right, get good health care, and lead lives that are free of chronic stress. Yan. The problems of teenage motherhood is, yun nga, hindi pa tapos ng pag-aaral, incomplete education, thus may lead also to poverty and marital difficulties that will affect the child's later development. Yan. For women 35 years of age and older, yung miscarriage naman at saka stillbirth, yun yung more likely to happen. No? Miscarriage, ito yung nakukunan, nalalaglag, yung fetus. Stillbirth, ito yung pag pinanganak mo, patay yung baby. Yan, stillbirth yun. So, nasa loob pa lang siya, patay na siya. Kaya nung nilabas mo, nung nilabas ng nanay, patay yung bata. Also, women in their 40s are more liable to give birth to babies with Down syndrome. Ayun, nabanggit ko na yun kanina. Ayan. So, teratogens. These are drugs, diseases, and environmental hazards. Ayan. Ang tawag sa kanila ay teratogens. So, how teratogens influence prenatal development? Okay, so ito yung mga, ayan. Number 1, the impact of a teratogen depends on the genotype of the organism. Kasi depende rin naman no, sa genes ng isang babae na magbubuntis kung gaano yung, to what extent yung magiging impact ng teratogen. Teratogen is any agent that cause harm or hazard to the prenatal development, no? It can be drugs or medicine, yung mga prescription drugs, or it can be substance, any substance that is harmful also, or diseases like German measles, no, and the like. And also other environmental hazards can be considered a teratogen. Yan. Pangalawa, that impact of teratogen changes over the course of prenatal development. So, depende rin naman sa kung nasan ka ng period of prenatal development. So, mas may effect ba kapag nandun tayo sa may germinal, embryonic, or fetal? Yan. So, depende kung ano yung magiging impact ng teratogen na yun kung nasan ka ng stage or period of prenatal development. Pangatlo, each teratogen affects a specific aspect or aspects of prenatal development. It can be biological lang yung affected, it can be physical or cognitive or mental or psychological, no? Depende kung ano yung aspect din. So, hindi naman lahat ay affected. For example, sa Down syndrome, physical, affected, di ba? Pare-pareho sila ng itsura. Kakaiba yung kanilang facial features, as well as yung kanilang intellectual aspect, affected din. Yan. So, pero hindi naman affected yung kanilang, let's say, emotional aspect, di ba? Nasasaktan din sila, masaya din naman sila, nalulungkot. Yan. So, hindi affected yung part na yun. 4. The impact of teratogens depends on the dose. Yung dosage, gaano ba kadami, gaano ba konti yung dapat o yung parang gaano ba kadami bago siya magkaroon ng effect doon sa buntis, diba? Or doon sa fetus. Yan. So, halimbawa, kung alcoholic yung nanay, wala namang effect, no? Compared doon sa nanay na konti lang yung nainom pero ang laki ng na-effect. Ang laki ng effect dun sa fetus. So, depende rin naman sa dosage and of course, dun sa genotype ng mother. And panghuli, damage from teratogen is not always evident at birth but may appear later in life. Ayan. So, this happens dun sa mga gene link, no, sa mga chromosomal abnormalities. Tulad ng mga ba yung gene link, yung Huntington's disease. Diba? Sabi natin, merong abnormality dun sa kanyang chromosome number 4, I guess. No? Pero hindi naman siya evident at birth. Later pa, kapag dating pa niya ng adult, saka palang makikita yung, or saka palang mangyayari yung abnormality na yon. Yan. So, depende rin. No? Damage from teratogen is not always evident at birth. It can later appear sa adulthood ng bata. Okay? So, yan. Ito yung yung parang scale. So we can see here the different periods or the weeks of the prenatal development. So ito yung first, second week, or the period of the zygote, the germinal period, the implantation. Yan, dito nangyayari. So usually, this is not susceptible to teratogens. Yan ha. So itong week na to, germinal period, yung sinasabi nila na cell pa lang, no, fertilized egg pa lang, hindi siya susceptible to teratogen. So more likely, ang nangyayari dito, susceptible sa gene link or chromosomal abnormalities. Okay, next period, the embryonic period. So ito yung 3 to 8 weeks. Ayan. So pwede nang ma-affect ng mga teratogens. So makikita nyo yung kulay pula, yung red, greatest sensitivity to teratogens. And the blue one, the less sensitivity to teratogen. Although, still potentially significant. No? Huwag nating babaliwalain. Porque blue, okay na. Pero yung red, yun talaga. May malaking sensitivity to teratogen. Tulad halimbawa nito, yung 3, 4, 5 weeks. Ayan. So, dito nabubuo na yung mga organs, yung heart, central nervous system, yung heart and eye, ayan, limbs. Yan. So, kapag dito na-expose yung buntis sa mga teratogen na nabanggit, it can cause a severe damage, no, dito sa mga parts of the body na to na nabanggit. Ayan, sa 3 to 4, 3, 4, and 5th week. Ayan. And then, affected pa rin, no, pagdating dito sa 6, 7, and 8. Although, hindi ganun ka-sensitive, pero pwede pa rin may potential pa rin to damage. Ayan. And what else? Sa fetal period, between 9 to 38 weeks, ayan, so blue na siya, mostly blue, ibig sabihin less sensitive na sa teratogens kapag nasa fetal period. So, if you can notice, mas greater yung sensitivity to teratogen during the embryo stage. Diba? Yung doon nangyayari yung organogenesis. Yan. Kaya kapag doon ka na-expose, doon pa naman sa weeks na yon, minsan hindi mo alam, buntis ka na pala. No, kaya nga, di ba, pinagbabawal yung mga buntis diba, sa ospital, yung matapat ka lang sa may nag-x-ray, di ba, bawal yon kasi nga yung radiation, radiation is an environmental hazard, di ba? May malaking sensitivity tayo, no? Kapag buntis tayo ay na-expose sa radiation, dulot ng x-ray, pwedeng maapektuhan yung mga organs ng ating embryo. Ayan. Pero pagdating sa fetal period, ayan, medyo nagle-lessen na. Nagle-lessen na yung sensitivity to teratogen. Pero syempre, potentially significant pa rin siya. Okay? So, yan. Yan. So, ito yung mga teratogenic drugs and their consequences. So first, we have the alcohol, no? The number one. Syempre, yan yung pinakagamit na gamit. Alcohol can cause fetal alcohol syndrome, cognitive deficits, heart damage, retarded growth. Yan. Aspirin, deficits in intelligence, attention, and motor skills. Caffeine, yan, bawal yan. Yung mga caffeinated drinks like coffee, soft drinks, tea, yan. Lower birth weight, decreased muscle tone. Cocaine and heroin, retarded growth, irritability in newborns. Marijuana, lower birth weight, less motor control. And nicotine that can be found in cigarettes, retarded growth, and possible cognitive impairment. So kung if you can notice, no, puro tayo sa intelligence may kinalaman, no? So affected yung cognitive as well as yung motor skills. Ayan. Okay, so drugs pa rin. Ayan, ito yung bata, ito yung example ng tsura ng bata na merong FASD or Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. Ayan. So sabi dito, disorder affecting babies whose mothers consumed large amounts of alcohol while they were pregnant. So children with FAS usually grow more slowly than normal and have heart problems and misshapen faces. Youngsters with FAS often have a small head, a thin upper lip, a short nose, and widely spaced eyes. Ayan. Have serious attentional, cognitive, and behavioral problems. Okay, now let's go to diseases. So these are also teratogenic. Sabihin, meron siyang harmful effect and can cause abnormalities in pregnancy. Yan, AIDS, of course, no? Ang consequence niyan ay frequent infections, neurological disorders, and death. Chlamydia, premature birth, low birth weight, eye inflammation. Chickenpox o bulutong, spontaneous abortion, developmental delays, mental retardation or intellectual disability. Cytomegalovirus, deafness, blindness, abnormally small head, mental retardation also. Genital herpes, encephalitis, enlarged spleen, improper blood clotting. Rubella or the German measles o yung tigdas. Mental retardation, damage to ears, eyes, and heart. Ayan. Syphilis, damage to the central nervous system, teeth. Toxoplasmosis, damage to eye and brain, and learning disabilities. So as you can see, AIDS, chlamydia, genital herpes are some examples of sexually transmitted diseases. Okay. So some diseases pass from the mother through the placenta to attack the embryo or fetus directly. So, ganun yung nangyayari, no? Pero yung iba lang, hindi naman lahat. So, galing doon sa placenta, nata-transfer doon sa embryo kasi nga meron passageway, no, yung umbilical cord, papasok doon sa embryo or sa fetus. Yung AIDS, cytomegalovirus, rubella, and syphilis, sila yung mga examples ng mga disease na natatransmit through the placenta. Yung iba, they attack during birth, no? Doon sa process ng panganganak na mismo, tulad ng herpes. Bakit? Kasi yun ay sugat. So, yung sugat na yun ay kapag inilabas yung bata doon sa may puwerta, pwedeng ma-infect yung bata. And yan, the virus is present in the lining of the birth canal and babies are infected as they pass through the canal. Kaya para maiwasan yon, the mother can opt for cesarean section para ma-avoid. Okay, so dito, iba't ibang environmental hazards and their consequences. So ito yung 4 na common na mga environmental teratogens and their potential consequences. Number 1 is lead that can cause mental retardation or intellectual disability, no, sa mga bata and even sa mga buntis. Mercury for retarded growth, mental retardation again, and cerebral palsy. And PCBs, no, makikita to sa mga paint, sa mga pintura, no, impaired memory and verbal skills. X-ray, yan. Isa rin yan sa hazardous. Kaya hindi pinapayagan yung mga hinihinalang buntis or buntis na matapat man lang, no? Kahit matapat man lang sa mga may X-ray or may nag-X-ray. Yan, kasi it can cause retarded growth, no, dun sa part ng fetus, leukemia, and also intellectual disability or mental retardation. Yan. So, lagi ko sinasabi yung intellectual disability kasi hindi na natin ginagamit, no, yung term na mental retardation. Yun ay mas preferred na, no, sa DSM-5 yung intellectual disability pagdating sa retarded growth or retarded development ng intelligence. Yan. As a byproduct of life in an industrial world, people are often exposed to toxins in food they eat, fluids they drink, and air they breathe. Kaya very exposed tayo lalo na ngayon sa panahon ng pandemic, merong additional na environmental hazard. So it can be considered as environmental hazard, no? Kaya very challenging din and very difficult din to become pregnant nowadays. Yan. Ito yung PCB na sinasabi ko a while ago. Polychlorinated biphenyls, no? Contaminated fish and wildlife. Ito yung mga nire-release na waste, hazardous waste ng mga factory, no? Yan. And even yung mga pintura, some of paints have this chemical. Yan. The radio frequency radiation that cell phones generate has sometimes been linked to health risks in adults, but the findings are very inconsistent. So, hindi pa naman siya considered na fact na yung cellphone, no, yung mga cellphone natin ay nag-i-emit ng radio frequency radiation. Yan. But, mabuti na yung sure, no, nag-iingat kesa sa than to be sorry. Okay, so, ayan. So, pupunta na tayo ngayon sa another topic, the prenatal diagnosis and treatment. So, paano ba natin pwedeng makita ang loob ng sinapupunan ng isang babaeng buntis. So, yan ay diagnosis. And of course, kapag merong hindi magandang nangyari or merong defect or abnormality, lalo na kung physical sa loob, ay pwedeng i-treat yan. So, I really don't care whether I have a boy or girl just as long as it's healthy. So, syempre, bilang mga first-time parents, kailangan gusto natin healthy yung ating babies. Ayan. So, etong Okay. So, itong genetic counseling, ginagawa ito, pwede na itong available na to ngayon. Ginagawa ito ng mga lalo na ng mga first time parents o ng mga mag-aasawa pa lang, no, to make it a point na malaman nila yung history ng genes ng mapapangasawa nila para malaman nila kung may chance ba o may tendency na magkaroon no, ng certain disorder or abnormality na may kinalaman sa kanilang genes or chromosomes. Yan. So a genetic counselor asks about family medical history and constructs a family tree for each parent to assess the odds that their child would inherit a disorder. So they advises prospective parents about their choices. So halimbawa, nalaman mo na ay may gene pala 'to 'no, para sa schizophrenia, aasawahin mo pa ba 'yun? O 'yan, pero nasa sa kanila 'yun kung gusto pa rin nilang ituloy yung kanilang pag-iisang dibdib and much more yung kanilang, ah, plano 'no to conceive and to reproduce. Okay, so 'yan. For the prenatal diagnosis, so number 1 dito yung ultrasound. Ayan. So ito pinaka-common no para ma-diagnose or makita yung loob ng tiyan, no? So ultrasound is a prenatal diagnostic technique that uses sound waves to generate an image of the fetus. So as early as I think 5 months, no, if I'm not mistaken, 5 months pwede nang makita rin yung gender, no? And we also have ultrasound, yung intrauterine, nakalimutan ko kung ano yung exact term, pero yun yung isang klase ng ultrasound na ginagawa kapag weeks pa lang yung embryo sa loob, no? Or hindi pa nga, magiging embryo pa lang. Intrauterine na something, ganon. Ultrasound din siya. Na kung saan parang may pinapasok sa loob, no? And then makikita mo rin dun sa monitor, naka-reflect din sa monitor, yung pinaka-itsura nung loob ng uterus. And of course, makikita rin doon yung amniotic sac, amnion, or the embryo kung meron na, and of course, yung iba pang bahagi ng tiyan or sinapupunan or the womb, no? Or the uterus. Yan, scientific term, no? Ayan, so sound waves, yan, nagta-travel papunta sa, yun nga, sa monitor. And then, ito yung ibang pictures, no? Ngayon, 3D na, no? 3-dimensional na. So, talagang kitang-kita mo na yung buong, dati kasi parang X-ray type lang eh. Parang itim lang, no? Parang shade lang yung nakikita ngayon. Kaya nang makita yung 3-dimensional image nung pinaka-fetus. Yan. So, can be used as early as 4 or 5 weeks. Ayan na nga. And this is also useful, no, kapag gusto mo malaman kung, lalo na kung malapit ka ng mga anak, kung naka-position na ba siya, no, that is position sa birth, no, kung ready na ba siyang lumabas. Yan, kasi dapat ang ulo ay nasa ilalim na, nasa may malapit na sa puwerta. Siguro mga 6-7 months ganon, no? 6-7 months. Kasi kung hindi, syempre gagawa ng paraan yan, or at least may maiisip pa tayong way para safe yung delivery. Helpful then to detect twins or triplets. So makikita rin yan sa ultrasound. So ang ultrasound talaga ay more on the physical image nung loob ng tiyan. Yan. And of course, to identify physical deformities, 'di ba? Halimbawa, yung spina bifida. Makikita dito sa ultrasound kung may bukol doon sa may likuran, no? Kasi nga, 'di ba, kapag hindi nag-close yung neural tube, may tendency na pasukin to ng spinal fluid at bumukol, and then apektado nito yung posture ng baby. So, pag lumabas siya, dahil affected yung kanyang posture, so hindi siya makakatayo, no? Kapag ready na siyang tumayo. So, yun. At least kapag nalaman natin na may ganoong deformities, pwede nating magawa ng paraan. And ayan din, abnormal growth of the head, no? Makikita rin kung medyo may kalakihan yung ulo, no? Or kung may hydrocephaly ba yun? Yan. So at least magagawa ng paraan. Kaya ino-ultrasound. Yan. Okay. So another one is the Another one is the fetal MRI. No, the development of brain imaging techniques has led to increasing use of fetal MRI. MRI or the magnetic resonance imaging. Ayan. So, dito, madadiagnose din yung mga malformations ng mga organs natin. Ayan. So, certain abnormalities ng central nervous system, ng chest, gastrointestinal tract, nung bata, ha? And then genital or urinary organs, and of course, the placenta. Yan. Another one is the maternal blood screening. So, ito, syempre yung blood. So, for testing, so kukuhanan ng dugo. Ayan, yung mother, para matest at ma-identify kung prone ba or may tendency to have a birth defects yung bata. Magkaroon ng spina bifida and of course, also the Down syndrome. Can also be used to detect congenital heart disease risk in the fetus. Yan. So, risk lang na maig sabihin, potential. May chance na magkaroon, pero not necessarily na talagang magkakaroon yung bata ng ganong klaseng sakit or abnormality. Yan. So, isa rin ito yung amniocentesis, kung saan yung merong syringe na tinuturok dun sa amniotic sac para makakuha ng sample fluid or amniotic fluid sa loob. So, ito, mas high-end, mas high-tech siya na way to diagnose the fetus, no? Kasi dito makikita hindi lang yung physical, kundi pati yung genetic, chromosomal features, no? Yan, ng bata. Yan. Okay, so makikita yung genotype niya. Yan. Another one that is also a high-end kind of prenatal diagnosis is the CVS or the chorionic villus sampling. Dito, kumukuha din ng sample tissue dun sa chorion. Yung chorion ay nandoon sa placenta. Matatagpuan yun dun sa placenta. So, meron ulit needle na parang ituturok dun sa tiyan, no, nasasakto dun sa placenta para makakuha ng sample tissue dun mismo sa chorion ng placenta para din ma-detect yung chromosomal or genetic, no, abnormalities ng bata. Ayan. So, syempre, dahil high-end yan, may mga kamahalan, no, yung amniocentesis and chorionic villus sampling. Okay? Yan. Another prenatal treatment is, of course, we have this fetal medicine. So, the field of medicine concerned with treating prenatal problems before birth. Yan. So, one approach is to treat disorders medically by administering drugs or hormones, no, to the fetus. Kasi minsan hormonal yung problem natin. Tulad halimbawa nitong fetal hypothyroidism. The thyroid gland does not produce enough hormones. Can lead to retarded physical and mental development, and can be treated by injecting the necessary hormones directly into the amniotic cavity, resulting in normal growth. So, maganda na ma-detect kagad yun bago pa siya lumabas para nako-correct na siya. Yan. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia. The adrenal glands naman na nagpo-produce ng androgen. So, this causes early maturation of boys or sa girls. Ayan. Another way to correct prenatal problem is fetal surgery. Tulad nga nung pwedeng gawin sa merong spina bifida. It can be corrected with fetal surgery in the 7th or 8th month of pregnancy. Also used to treat a disorder affecting identical twins in which one twin, the donor, pumps blood through its own and the other twin circulatory system. No? Yung mga twin na, halimbawa yung Siamese twins, di ba? Yung mga magkakadugtong yung kanilang katawan. So, fetus pa lang, pwede silang paghiwalayin. Yan. Pwedeng i-surgery, dumaan sa surgery. Yan. Syempre, paglabas na. No? Yan. So, delikado rin yan, no? Okay, so another approach is genetic engineering, in which defective genes are replaced by synthetic normal genes. So talaga namang napaka high-end na, high-tech na ng genetic engineering. Of course, syempre hindi pa naman siya ganun kalawak yung kanyang implementation. Delikado po yan. Ayan. So, because we are playing God in that sense, di ba? We are playing ba the nature, di ba? By nature, yun na talaga yun eh. So, kapag meron tayong some kind of parang tawag dito, modification or yun nga, nire-replace natin. So, parang hindi, tumataliwas na tayo dun sa nature. But of course, we can do that. But yun nga, siguro sa mga may pera lang din, medyo may kamahalan din yan. Yan. And yun nga, yung moral issues na kaakibat ng genetic engineering. Okay, so eto, infertility, sa Tagalog yung pagkabaog, no? So inability to conceive a child after 12 months of regular intercourse without contraception. So hindi naman kagad sa unang try, tapos hindi nag-work bog agad or infertile agad. So, yeah, meron siyang duration. So, dapat maka 12 months no, na sila ay constantly, regularly nag-intercourse ng walang contraception but still hindi sila nagkakaanak. Yan. So, ito yung mga reasons. Maybe the woman may not be ovulating. Ayan. Kasi kailangan mag-release ng eggs, no, to be fertilized. So, ibig sabihin, syempre may mga babae na yung tinatawag nating irregular yung kanilang menstruation. So, maybe they are not ovulating once a month or maybe twice a month, no? Yan. So, irregular yung cycle niya. Number 2, she may be producing abnormal ova. Ibig sabihin, yung egg ay hindi normal or yun yung may defect. Kaya minsan, dun sa weeks pa lang, yung germinal period, nalalaglag na. Why? Kasi, ibig sabihin nun, yung kanyang genes or chromosome nung pinaka-egg, malamang po ay abnormal. So, ang tawag doon ay spontaneous abortion, na kung saan kusa siyang inexpel, no? Kasi nga, hindi siya maganda, kumbaga sa produkto, reject siya. So, dapat siyang ilabas ng katawan. So, hindi siya dapat mabuhay, parang ganun. So, maybe, abnormal yung ova. Kasi tayong mga babae, baby pa lang, bata pa lang, may eggs na. So, merong right age na kung saan magra-ripe yun na pwede nang ma-fertilize. Kaya lang kapag habang tumatagal, parang some kind of parang, hindi ko sinasabing yun nga, pero parang ang tendency parang nabubulok, no, yung pinaka-egg. So, parang na-expire yun. And, kung masyado naman bata, syempre hindi pa hinog, hindi pa mature, hindi rin okay yung egg. So, dapat sakto lang. So, ano yung ideal age? Dun sa slide natin a while ago, no? 25 ba? 20 to 35, parang ganon. Pero still, depende pa rin sa woman's body, sa kanyang, of course, sa kanyang genetic makeup, kung may kapasidad ba siya na mag-conceive ng normal na fertilized egg or fetus. Ayan. Her fallopian tubes through which ova normally reach the womb may be blocked. Yan. So, pwedeng may bara, no? Baka may bara, baka may bukol, may cyst. Yan. So, minsan akala natin buntis tayo, no? Pero yung pala, pala siya, cyst pala, no? Na malignant, no? Cancerous. So, may mga pagkakataong ganun, no? Yung mga nakabara. Yan, kaya pala hindi siya mag-conceive kasi meron palang nakabara na something. Yan, na kailangan mo nang tanggalin, yan, para makakapag-conceive. Yung iba naman, kahit tanggalin mo, hindi na talaga makakapag-conceive. Or she may have a disease that prevents implantation of the embryo in the uterus. Yan, pwede rin yan. kaya hindi ma-implant, no? Dahil meron palang certain disease, no? Ayan, the man, ito sa part naman ng husband, no, may produce too few sperm. Yan, kasi meron ding number of sperm na parang para makapenetrate or para makapag-fertilize ng egg. So, dapat sakto. Or mas marami, mas okay. Yan. Kaya pag kukonti ay medyo less yung capacity to fertilize an egg. Yan. The sperm may lack motility yan kasi kailangan mabilis, kailangan strong yung sperm cell. So, may mga sperm cell na, yun nga, mahihina, mabagal. So, hindi siya kaagad makakapunta doon sa nag-aantay na egg cell doon sa may fallopian tube. So, hindi magko-conceive, hindi mag-fertilize yung egg. So, therefore, walang reproduction na magaganap. Or he may have a blocked passageway. Ayan. So, ganoon din sa boys, sa man, pwede ring baka may barado, no, dun sa nilalabasan ng sperm cell. Ayan, sa passageway. Okay, labor and delivery. So, ayan na, papalapit na tayo sa panganganak. Okay? So, labor, ito yung sinasabi nila na pinaka-masakit or pinaka-painful na pwedeng ma-experience ng isang babae o ng isang tao. Yan. This is an appropriate name for childbirth, which is the most intense, prolonged physical effort that humans experience. Yan. So, sa iba kasing babae, inaabot ng siguro 24 hours, no, the most, no, pinaka matagal na yun. Iba naman, as saglit lang, 30 minutes, 1 hour, yung labor nila, bago yung delivery. No, magkaiba kasi yun. Yung labor, yun yung contractions, no, yun yung stage na kung saan ay sumasakit na yung tiyan, nakakaramdam na ng dumudugo, no? Dinudugo siya. O kaya naman, yung start ng pumutok yung panubigan. Yan. So, yan yung mga stages ng labor. Then, yung delivery pertains only to yung paglabas na. Yung paglabas na mismo ng fetus. So, sa labor, meron tayong tatlong stages. Beginning when the uterus contracts, yun nga yung parang pakiramdam mo ay ikaw ay nadudumi, and ending when the placenta is expelled. So, after ng fetus lumabas, sunod na yung placenta. Yan. So, ito yung stage 1. From 12 to 24 hours for a first birth. The uterus starts to contract. The first contractions are weak and irregular, no? Pabugso-bugso, mahina lang, pero habang tumatagal, nagiging strong at mas madalas, no? Mas tumatagal. Yan. So, ibig sabihin nito, yung cervix, no? Yung sa may puerta, nag-enlarge na siya. So, the opening from uterus to the vagina to approximately hanggang 10 centimeters. Yan, para kumasya yung fetus o yung bata. Yan. So, no, yung sa case ko noon, when I gave birth, it took me almost 24 hours talaga sa labor. No, my uterus starts to contract as early as December 31 in the morning, no, and then may blood na rin siya, and then I went to the lying in para ma-admit, then inabot na ng kinabukasan, January 1, wala pa din, no, hindi pa rin siya lumalabas, and then nung 3 a.m. January 1, doon na nag-burst, pumutok na yung panubigan o yung amniotic sac. And then that's the time na syempre baka maubusan ng oxygen yung bata, and then early in the morning ng January 1, 7 a.m., I was rushed in the hospital in Manila. And inabot pa ako ng 1 o'clock until yung contraction o yung stage 1 talaga namang hanggang 1 o'clock. Tapos, pagdating ng mga 2 or 3 saka pa lang ako dinala sa mga 5 siguro yon saka pala ako dinala sa delivery room. And at 6:02 in the evening, dun pa lang lumabas. Yan. So, ganun siya katagal. So, parang lagpas nga ng 24 hours eh. Yan. So, stage 2, the baby passes through the cervix and enters the vagina. So the mother helped push the baby along by contracting muscles in her abdomen. So there are times na in my case, the doctor was helping to push the abdomen para parang tinutulungan din na lumabas yung fetus. And then soon, the top of the baby's head appears. Ang tawag doon pag lumabas na yung ulo ay crowning. Within about an hour, the baby is delivered. So, mabilis yun. Mabilis lang siya. Hindi siya pwedeng patagalin. And then, stage 3, lasts only minutes after lumabas ng fetus. Maya-maya, kusang ilalabas o expel ng mother yung placenta. Yan. Okay, so ano-ano ba yung mga approaches to childbirth? So, meron tayong natural. Yan, ako po ay natural birth, no? Normal delivery. Ayan. Walang kahit na anong pain relieving medications. Yan. And prepared childbirth or the Lamaze method, no? Ito yung kasama mo yung asawa mo, no? Meron kayong mga sessions, may program. Yan. So ngayon pwedeng kasabay mo siyang nag-exercise, nag-yoga, meditate, ganyan. And yon, may program siya. Parang siya yung magiging coach mo para pag manganganak ka na, kasama mo siya doon sa delivery room. Ayan. So, medyo pang mayamanin, no? Yung Lamaze or Lamaze method. Yan. Home delivery, ito yung dati pa na ginagawa, no? Yung mga tinatawag nating mga midwife or komadrona, di ba? Or hilot, yan. So, uso yan sa mga probinsya. I don't know kung ganun pa din, no? Sa mga probinsya natin. Pero, sa city, bihira na, no? Yung mga true home delivery. Ayan. Safe yan kung healthy yung mother and the child. Pero kung may komplikasyon, delikado po yan. Kasi kailangan natin ng mga aparato sa ospital, kaya po dapat ay sa ospital nanganganak o kaya naman ay sa bahay paanakan o yung mga lying-in. Pero kung healthy, walang problema, walang komplikasyon, pwedeng-pwede pa rin ang home delivery. Kasi license naman po ang ating mga midwife. Yun nga lang, maliban lang doon sa mga hilot, no, mga kakilala natin sa probinsya, yung mga lola na manghihilot, mga kumadrona. So, ayun. Pero dahil nga experience na sila, pwede pa rin naman natin silang pagkatiwalaan ng ating buhay at ng buhay ng fetus. Then, ito yung Lamaze class, no? Ganyan yung nangyayari. So, kasama yung husband, no? Dun sa mga sessions. Yan, exercise, yoga, meditation, at kung ano-ano pa, no? Na ginagawa, no? Pagbuntis. Ayan, para daw, pag lalabas na siya, yung fetus o yung baby, ay hindi na mahirap, no? Less stressful. Kumbaga, parang nire-ready mo, kaya nga prepared childbirth, no? Nire-ready mo yung katawan mo sa labor and delivery. Ayan, and then may tinatawag din tayong cesarean delivery. Ito, ginagawa kapag, ayan po, kapag, halimbawa yung posisyon ng baby ay hindi naka-birth position, no? 'Di ba? Ulo dapat ay nasa puwerta, nasa ilalim na. Halimbawa, yan yung breech position, ibig sabihin niya yung nakapahalang. Yung kanyang puwet, yun yung nasa vagina o malapit sa vagina o malapit sa puwerta. So, nakapahalang siya. So, hindi yun po pwede. O kaya naman, kung hindi pa rin umikot, no? Yung paa, yung una, o yung tinatawag nating suhe o suwi, no? Yan. And, kapag ang ulo ng baby ay nalipat na, ay malaki masyado, no? Sabihin natin may abnormality like merong hydrocephalus or hydrocephaly, ganyan. So, hindi rin siya po pwede. And yung kaninang binanggit ko, yung pagkakaroon ng genital herpes or STD ng nanay ay sinasuggest din, nire-recommend din na cesarean section. Kasi nga ay para iwasan na ma-infect ng genital herpes yung baby. Ayan, marami pang dahilan para or cause para masisaryan. Pwede ring yung halimbawa ay high blood o kaya diabetic, ganyan. Yung bang mahihirapan kasi yung nanay na mailabas, maiire yung baby kaya sinasuggest, sinire-recommend na cesarean section. O kaya masyado malaki yung baby, pwede rin yun. Isa rin yun sa mga dahilan. Overweight, no, yung baby. Kaya nga sabi nila, huwag mong masyadong palakihin yung baby mo sa loob kasi mahihirapan kang manganak at mahirapan din yung baby. Pwede mo naman siyang busugin, palakihin kapag lumabas na siya. Ayan. Ito yung isa, no, kung ewan ko kung napapanood nyo to, uso to sa mga artista, no, sa mga celebrity, sa mga kilalang tao. Yan. So, ito yung nauuso ngayon, yung tinatawag nating water birth. Ayan. Since ang bata ay sanay, no? Sanay siya sa tubig doon sa loob ng tiyan kasi nga yung amniotic fluid, matagal siyang nabuhay doon. 9 buwan siyang nasanay sa loob ng tubig na sa may sa uterus, sa amniotic sac niya. So how much more kung manganganak ang nanay sa katubigan, di ba? So ibig sabihin, yung environment sa loob ay hindi bago, no, para dun sa fetus. At sa part ng nanay, hindi rin yun masakit. Less stressful din at less painful din. Yan kapag nasa tubig. Pero syempre, meron yung mga fina-follow din na protocols and procedures bago siya maisagawa. Yan. Hindi ko lang alam kung magkano yan, no? So, common birth complications. Ito mga complications na to, pwedeng itong mga to ay isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit kailangang i-cesarean section. Tulad nito, cephalopelvic disproportion, di ba? Mas malaki yung ulo kaysa doon sa pelvis. So, it's impossible for the baby to pass through the birth canal. Irregular position, di ba? Tulad ng breech position na nakapahalang, una yung puwet. So, hindi rin po pwede. Yan. Pre-eclampsia o yung nanay mismo, high blood. Yan, may high blood pressure, may protein sa kanyang urine, no? May UTI. Kaya nga pag buntis, di ba, dapat tinitingnan, di ba, kung may UTI. So, dapat wala yun. Yan. Pero prone sa UTI talaga kapag buntis. Yan. Prolapse, yung umbilical cord. Ito yung nakapulupot, no? Yung nakapulupot sa leeg or sa katawan, yung umbilical, kumbaga nagkabuhol-buhol na. Ayan. So, hindi rin po pwede na lumabas doon sa may birth canal kasi nga, baka lalong maipit, baka masakal, no? And it will lead to hypoxia. At yun yung ikakamatay ng bata, yung hypoxia. Or parang less yung oxygen, no, dun sa baby. Yan. So, meron ding preterm o premature. Ayan, take note po, hindi na tinatawag na premature ang mga baby na pinanganak ng kulang sa buwan. Let's say 8 months, 7 months, ay premature baby, hindi na po yung ginagamit. Bakit? Kasi pag sinasabi nating premature, para kasing may connotation na parang abnormal, no? Parang disorder, ganon, hindi normal, ganyan. Premature. Yan. So, ibig sabihin, immature, parang ganon. Pero hindi. Kaya mas appropriate term, pinalitan na po ito ng preterm. Kasi, ibig sabihin, hindi niya na abot yung saktong term, which is 3 trimester, siguro 38 to 40 weeks, no? So, hindi niya naabot yung desired or exact term na dapat, kaya pre-term. So, bago matapos yung term, nailabas na siya or lumabas na siya. Yan, kaya mas tamang term ay preterm, hindi na premature, okay? And then, meron ding mga small for date infants. Ibig sabihin nito, oras na niya para lumabas, no? Tapos na yung kanyang term. Sakto naman sa buwan. Yun nga lang, mababa ang timbang. Small for date. Yan. So, merong low birth weight, very low birth weight, at extremely low birth weight. Yan. So, sa low, syempre, ito yung mga medyo, ayan, 2,500 grams or 5 pounds. Yan. Mga 2.5 kilogram yata, kung hindi ako nagkakamali. Tapos, very low birth weight. Ayan, and extremely low birth weight. Parang kasing laki na lang ng siguro 1.5 or 1 litrong Coke, parang ganon. So, kapag ganon, may high chance na hindi mag-survive ang isang baby. Yan. Okay, so parenthood. Ang parenthood, so now, once na mga anak ka na, you're already considered or yung role mo na is also a mother. Yan. And yung husband mo or yung man in your life is the father. So both of you are now called parents. And parenting is not that easy. It's not it's not a point in life na nakapag-prepare ka or pwede ka mag-prepare, no, sa buhay mo. Kasi ang parenting ay para rin siyang pag-aasawa, lifetime adjustment, no, parang syempre lalo na kung first time parent ka, first time mo, nag-adjust ka pa. Kumbaga, tinatansya mo what works for your child, what works for you. So, parang trial and error. But of course, with love and care, with your whole identity, with all your heart and soul, pag binahal mo yung anak mo, so, magiging mabuti kang parent. So, ito yung mga pwedeng pagdaanan ng isang mother. So, meron tayong tinatawag na postpartum period. So, ito naman ay normal. Pag sinabing part-home pregnancy, di ba, sabihin tapos na. Yan, the period after childbirth, when the mother adjusts both physically and psychologically to the process of childbirth. Kasi hindi madali yun. Mahirap yun. It's very difficult, it's very painful, di ba? So, hindi lang physical yung affected, hindi ka lang physically na pagod. Pagod din yung utak mo, yung mind mo, yung emotions mo. You're very emotional. Yan. So, this period lasts for about 6 weeks or until her body has completed its adjustment and returned to a near pre-pregnant state. Ayan. Siyempre, kapapanganak mo pa lang, yung body mo ay hindi pa bumabalik sa kanyang dating figure, no? Figura. So, nakakadagdag din yun, bumababa yung self-esteem, yung confidence level mo, hindi lang babae. Ayan, tapos kung sakaling single mom ka pa, wala kang asawa, or hindi ka supported ng family or anyone, mas lalong nakakadagdag sa kanyang pinagdadaanan, no? Kaya importante na merong nakasupport, merong kahit man lang yung member of the family, no, nakasupport sa mother na kapapanganak pa lang. Kaya napaka-delicate nung ganung stage. Kaya most likely, pwedeng mauwi, no, yung, may tawag dyan parang baby blues lang, no, parang lungkot na nauwi sa depression. Yan. So, postpartum depression, ito na yung condition experienced by women who have such strong feelings of sadness. So, tumagal na, medyo malaki na yung bata, 1 year old na, 2 years old, pero nasa extreme sadness ka pa din, extreme emotional ka pa din. So, probably, pwedeng may depression or postpartum depression. Ito yung mga nababalitaan natin na yung pinapatay yung anak nila, minamassacre yung mga anak niya, no, nilunod, then after, papakamatay siya, di ba? So, probably, malamang, no, hindi ko sinasabing iyan nga yung dahilan, pero more likely, no, na malamang po merong postpartum depression yung nanay na yun. Yan. Kung hindi man, baka naka-drugs, pwede din, or both. Yan. Kasi mahirap ipaliwanag eh, di ba? Na paano magagawa ng isang ina yung napatayin, di ba, yung kanyang mga anak. So, yun. Malamang po ay may kinalaman sa pag-iisip. Yan. So, a woman body, undergoes several changes. So, di ba? Her breast fill with milk, her uterus becomes smaller, and hormone levels drop. Yan. So, pareho nag-a-adjust psychologically, pati yung father. Kung dati, nung mag-asawa pa lang kayo, silang dalawa lang, di ba? Yung buong atensyon ng nanay nasa tatay. Ngayon, nung dumating na yung baby, syempre nahati na yung atensyon. So, sometimes, may mga ganitong klase ng family na kung saan ang tatay nafe-feel niya, siya naman yung nade-depress, siya naman yung nakakaramdam ng parang nale-left out. Yan. Postpartum depression, they are irritable, di ba? Have poor appetite and disturbed sleep and are apathetic. Apathetic meaning walang emosyon. Yan. So, hindi siya parang poker face, ganon. Hindi nakakaramdam ng saya, tuwa, galit, or lungkot. Apathy. Yan. So, yan yung mga signs, symptoms, irritable, no? Laging galit, mabilis magalit, naninigaw, ganyan. Na walang gana kumain. Hindi makatulog or tulog ng tulog. Ayan. So, yan yung mga signs na titingnan natin sa isang babae na kapapanganak lang na possible na may postpartum depression. So, kapag ganon, lapit na tayo sa mental health professional. Okay, so kung may mga katanungan po kayo, pwede kayong mag-comment dito mismo sa video na to, or pwede rin naman po doon sa ating schedule, no? Pwedeng one-on-one by appointment, or pwede rin naman doon sa ating coffee hour, or pwede rin naman sa Facebook Live natin tuwing Thursday, or pwede rin naman sa private messenger or email. So, marami pong paraan para po tayo magtanong. So, list down nyo lang po yung mga questions nyo at lahat po yan ay entertain ko. Wala po akong hindi sasagutin. Maraming salamat po.